Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
We said this for as long as we've known anything about this draft. We've known this as we started diving into draft content before hockey was even really being played. We knew this as we were evaluating the players once we start to get some more game footage and highlights and reports and everything. Even as we've buckled down over the past, month, 2 months to really grind out our analysis of these prospects, bringing in other people to give their analysis of these prospects, it has become so evident that this is the hardest draft we've ever worked on. Ever. Like, I feel 40% confident in my top 10 rankings, and it drops off a cliff after that. And not saying like I'm going to be 40% right. No, like I feel 40% confident that I'm even going to be my usual 10% right. Like, it is absolutely insane the amount of variance, flipping around of names, and I don't know, fuzziness there is in this draft.
You mean junior hockey in a pandemic with players playing hockey on a different continent in a varying amount of games makes it weird? Who would have ever predicted that? Also, now every time I hear the word variance, all I can think of is Loki. But anyways, I'm excited.
Believe it or not, still haven't watched the finale because last night's recording ran so long. I feel bad for Evan because I think this is this is the most work. Evan puts more and more work into prospect stuff every year, and you can tell. And Evan picked the worst year to really go headfirst into it.
Yes, it was a good year to be ultra busy at work, have to pack up your entire house to move to a new one, and get all that fun stuff sorted out, and the draft at the same time.
Evan is going to be responsible for both Brant Clark and Luke Hughes' draft rankings, probably two of the hardest prospects to pin down there. So that's completely on him. No, I'm kidding. All right, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, those who have been unfortunately listening throughout the entire draft season, thank you so much for coming up to this point. This isn't the last of our draft content, but this is our major piece of content, the NHL or the 2021 NHL Draft preview episode. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Cautiously and nervously, I'm Ryan Hanna.
Probably somehow over and under prepared, I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we will be talking everything 2021 NHL Draft as it pertains to the Red Wings and the league at large. We're going to be talking about some of our own personal rankings, what might happen at Detroit's pick, what other teams are going to do, what's going to happen at the 23rd overall pick for Detroit, who might fall to the second round that they could target with one of their 3 second-round picks, some possible trade scenarios. Brad is probably going to speak uninterrupted for 7.5 minutes without taking a breath at some point. Evan will turn purple, but then come back to life. It's going to be a whole thing. And then at the end, we have time carved out for patron questions for overtime. So that's just a quick preview of what maybe to expect. So we don't know how long this episode's going to go. We have no cap on it. We have no planned time. So whatever it ends up being, it ends up being. Before all that, of course, I do want to talk to you about the Jamie Daniels Foundation. The more we talk about substance use disorder, the faster we can end the stigma and get support to those in need. The Jamie Daniels Foundation is a children's foundation initiative that was established in memory of Jamie Daniels and founded by Jamie's father and Red Wings lead announcer, who you'll know as Ken Daniels, and Jamie's mother, Lisa Daniels Goldman. They strive to end the stigma of substance use disorder and provide support to those struggling with the disease or who are in recovery. To learn more and offer your support, visit jamiedanielsfoundation.org. And for all the new listeners, if this is your first time listening to the Winged Wheel Podcast or you haven't tuned in a while, I really encourage you to look back. Not too long ago, we did have an interview with Ken Daniels. It's a full episode, and it's probably one of our favorite, if not, the best interview we've ever had the privilege of doing. So really, really recommend you guys look back at that one. Okay, the 2021 draft. how confident do you, first question for the two of you, or I guess for all three of us, do you have one player you are absolutely set, like you go to bed at night wishing the Red Wings get? And if not, is it two? And if not, how many players are in that mix for you? Because for me, I think I'm looking at 3 minimum.
I'm happy in the sense of I really, really like these players, and I have less reservations about other players with 7 prospects in this draft. And then there's another 2 on top of that who I really like, but come with bigger question marks for me. So really, unless the Wings go way off the board, I don't think I'm going to dislike their pick. I could actually go to 10 because this is the one year I don't completely hate the goalie option. Still wouldn't do it. Still not a fan, but I'm like not completely against it. That being said, how many players do I have? Like, this is my guy for Detroit. If he's there beyond all shadow of a doubt, within reason of him being there at 6, there's one guy. And when we get to my rankings, you'll know it's no surprise. I've been pumping this guy's tires all year, so it won't come as a surprise to anybody. But yeah, I have one guy that I am praying with 8 to 9 others that I'd be more than happy with.
I have no idea who it could be, by the way.
Actually?
Who Brad's talking about? I think I know who it is, but I'm not going to say it, but I'm actually not sure.
Brad, he really doesn't listen to you. I'm convinced he actually does not listen to you at all.
No, he absolutely doesn't. Ryan, message who you think it is in the messenger chat, just because I thought I made it obvious. I just want to be sure about this now.
There's absolutely no... I guarantee Evan's going to read this and go, oh.
Okay, yeah, right. I got your post. Yes, absolutely. Okay, good.
I was wrong.
You know what? It does create for a more raw episode. Like, he tunes into the parts that matter. But for sure, it's fun to engage with someone who's kind of like a casual listener. That's what we have as one of the hosts.
Okay, so on who Evan thought it was, I'll give him partial credit because it is a guy I'm much higher on in the top 10.
That's how I got through university. Partial
credit.
So he's right that the guy he thought it was, I am higher on than most. But yeah, he's not the guy for me.
All right. And Evan, how many players have you zeroed in on that you're kind of wishing the Red Wings end up with?
Oh, man. Especially being at 6. This is a good year because the board can take some guys. The board can taketh and the board can giveth. Man, there's almost no one in the top 10 that I would be upset with. There's maybe one player who we'll probably get to at some point that I would be less than thrilled about if the Red Wings take him. But man, almost anybody in the top 10, and like Brad said, even Jesper Wallstedt I would be shocked. I would be very shocked, but I wouldn't be disappointed because he's so highly touted. So I'd say it's easy for me to say there's probably one guy in the pundits' consensus top 10 that I'm not overly keen about.
All right. Well, we'll get to that. First, let's do an overview of what the Red Wings have to look forward to this draft before any trades or anything happen. Of course, the Red Wings own the 6th overall pick in this year's draft. And believe it or not, that's as a result of them not moving down in the draft lottery for the first time. So it's a win. It's kind of like Evan getting through undergrad. You didn't fail, but it sure doesn't feel great. Oh man, it's storming in the background. Maybe that's a bad omen. The Red Wings have 2 first-round picks, of course, 6th overall, and then the pick from Washington, which is 23rd overall, which is actually the 22nd player off the board because Arizona owns pick 11, which they forfeited due to breaking the rules on prospect scouting and development. Or draft prospect scouting and development. 3 picks in the 2nd round, their own Edmonton's from the Andreas Athanasiou trade and New York's, which came from the Mark Stahl trade. Their 2 picks in the 3rd round, their own Vegas's pick. That is the last piece of the Tomas Tatar deal. Thank you, Ken Holland, for that one. Round 4, they have 2 picks, their own pick and Tampa Bay's that they got as part of moving Savard to Tampa Bay and facilitating that trade in this year's deadline. And 2 picks in round 5, their own and Ottawa's, which they got from Montreal in exchange for John Merrill. Hayden Verbeek also came over as part of that deal. And then 1 pick in round 6, as well as nothing in round 7. So that is quite a few picks for Detroit. That is 2, 5, 7, 9, 11. That is a dozen picks in this draft. Do you guys imagine any trades?
Yeah, I think statistically the odds just say with that many picks, there's going to be a trade up, a trade down. I mean, the reason they don't have a 7th round pick this year is because they swung a last minute deal to get an extra pick in last year's draft to get Chase Bradley. So there's probably going to be something like that. I think they traded back twice last draft. So in this draft, trading back is probably a better strategy than a normal year. So I expect to probably see that once or twice from the Red Wings. So we could end up with 13, 14 picks here when is all said and done. I don't think there's going to be anything earth-shattering. I don't think we're going to get an announcement. The Detroit Red Wings have acquired the 9th overall pick for Tyler Bertuzzi or anything like that. But I do expect there to be a couple.
More on trades to come. Let's get into it. Pick 6. Here's the thing. Here's the theme of this draft. This isn't a Connor McDavid draft. This isn't an Austin Matthews draft. This isn't, before we see this prospect pan out, this isn't an Alexis Lafreniere or Quentin Byfield draft. There doesn't seem to be that elite number 1 center, elite number 1 defenseman. Even the consensus number 1 pick, those who have him as a clear-cut consensus aren't even guaranteeing that he'll be a top-pairing defenseman. So in terms of top-end talent, the draft is more muted, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Red Wings are working with any less at 6th overall. If you're a team at 1st or 2nd overall, you might feel a bit cheesed that you're not getting a possible generational talent. But once you get down to pick 6, it kind of is what you would expect in most other drafts. So with that being said, just offering that context, Brad, as you've done a lot of legwork and a lot of additional draft content, let's add on to that pile. You start us off with your top 10 rankings for the 2021 NHL Draft. And for clarity for the listeners, these are our top 10 rankings, our own personal rankings. So this is de facto who we'd want Detroit to select if they're available in order.
Since I have done a lot of legwork on this one and a lot of due diligence, I would kindly ask to defer to go 3rd.
All right, Evan. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Is this for Detroit's pick?
This is your top 10 rankings, period. So
okay.
It's in effect. Why don't I go through, actually? I have mine prepared. I'm kind of itching to get at it, and then we'll let Evan go first. So I toyed with this one quite a bit. I wanted to see if I can break away from the consensus, but I did kind of fall in line with picks 1 and 2. I did take Owen Power and Matthew Beniers. I think Owen Power, though not the perfect defenseman, you cannot pass up the kind of physical package he has, the kind of skating he has with that package, and what he would do directly for Detroit's needs. A player of his caliber, I really only see him getting better as he learns to be more effective in using his physicality at the NHL level as well. Like, is this going to be a guy that's going to be top line, first power play unit, potting 30 goals a year or anything like that? No, but he can absolutely make a huge impact at both ends of the ice, and to have a 6'6" defenseman that's able to do what he does, I don't see the Red Wings passing that up. Then again, I hardly see the Buffalo Sabres passing that up. 2nd overall, I have Matthew Beniers. I did consider moving him down to 3rd, but I think for the purpose of the Red Wings, this is probably the most complete centerman that they could ask for to come out of this draft. It's a shame because I don't think he's going to reach them, but to have a 2-way centerman like Matthew Beniers that is as refined as he is, this is a guy where if you're adding more of a scoring touch or more of an elusive and dynamic offensive element to his game, he is a bona fide number 1 overall pick. And it's not even a question. Obviously, that's not the player he is completely, but he is. It is hard to see a centerman in this draft and say, yeah, that guy's definitely going to be a center. That's how Beniers projects to me. 3rd overall, and I think this is where a lot of people's interest is going to be for the Red Wings at 6 in terms of realistic players to fall. I have William Eklund. I give a lot of credit to Brad for this pick because he really kind of had me take a lot of 2nd and 3rd and 4th looks at him because I had him further down the list below some of the other players I'm going to mention here. But in terms of, I'm bad at making analogies with other sports, but there's a 5-tool player for baseball or something to that effect?
Yeah, 5-tool player. That's the money line for baseball.
Yeah, William Eklund does a lot of things really well. Not a lot of things, elite, but he's not exactly deficient in a lot of areas, and he's still getting better. And seeing his production in the SHL, it surpasses Alexander Holtz. It surpasses, in terms of production rates, I'm pretty sure he came out ahead of Lucas Raymond, who we were thrilled with last year for the Red Wings. This isn't a guy who I'm projecting is going to play center. That's been part of the appeal for him. Some people think he might be able to. I'm ranking him 3rd as a winger. I think he could be that effective for the Red Wings forward core. Number 4, and this is a guy which I think he's probably my favorite player out of this draft just because he's the most fascinating to me, and he's also the biggest risk. So Matthew Beniers at 2nd overall represents the most safe top-end pick that you can make. The biggest risk to me is number 4, Kent Johnson. I think he's the most skilled player in the draft. If this is a guy that improves his skating and develops more physically, which he is, absolutely able to do, he's a guy who's still developing in that realm. If you talk to his coaches, especially and teammates at Michigan, they say he's still coming along in that respect. Kent Johnson could be a massive, massive impact player. I don't think he's a complete swing and a miss. I don't see him completely falling out of the lineup if he doesn't pan out in those ways, but man, if he works out, the kind of things that he can do with the puck, the way he has a sense for the offensive zone, he can dish, he can score. Kent Johnson's an incredibly talented player. And if that skill translates, you're looking at probably the best player in the draft. Number 5 is a guy who I was down on before, but kind of came back up my list, is Brandt Clark. The biggest hitch that I had with him was the hitch in his skating, literally. Yes, he's a right-handed defenseman, and the Red Wings have more depth in that area than others, but Brandt Clark, if he makes even a little bit more progress in terms of, lower body strength and fixing that skating, you're looking at a really fantastic defenseman, especially in the realm of where the Red Wings are picking. Positionally, is it exactly what they need? No. But the defensive core still needs work. It's not solved just because they have Seider, Hronek, and, the litany of good, but we don't know how they'll end up prospects coming in. Like, they still need to build it out. So I'd be willing to forego the need for a lefty if a good enough right-handed defenseman was on the board, and Brandt Clark might be there. Another late riser for me, Mason McTavish. Centermen are valuable. The Red Wings do need a centerman. If this was a draft where there was clear-cut separation between tiers, between players, especially where the Red Wings are picking, I probably wouldn't give Mason McTavish's position this much credence, this much value. But the reality is this is muddy. It's very fuzzy in terms of where players are ranked. And the fact that he is able to make an impact as a centerman like he has shown, and probably projects as a centerman, that puts him up the board for me. He's a classic Yzerman pick, works his absolute ass off, does everything at both ends of the ice. Best skater in the world? No, absolutely not. And that'll be the biggest question with Mason McTavish. Luke Hughes is coming in at 7. I struggle with Luke Hughes. I feel like that's the one player I wish we could have seen at the U18s. He was it a lacerated tendon in his foot? And that took away a lot of opportunity to watch him, but phenomenal skater, just went through a massive growth spurt. Extremely skilled. I don't think he has the playmaking vision that his brother does, but at the same time, I hesitate to discount Hughes because we've been burned. Hughes is because we've been burned in the past. Dylan Guenther, I have at 8 purely as a function of the players ahead of him. You could easily make a case for Guenther at 3rd or 4th, and I would not argue with him. Incredibly skilled winger. I don't project him as something that the Red Wings exactly need over the other guys, though. If they did go with him, the Red Wings would still get an amazingly skilled player. Number 9, and I really tried to find justification to bring this player into the top 6 purely just to annoy Brad. That's Jesper Wallstedt. I talked about Ken Johnson as probably the most skilled player in this draft. Jesper Wallstedt might actually be the most talented player in this draft. And if you're saying, well, then why the hell isn't he higher? It's the ramifications of taking a goalie in the top 10. That's a lot of risk. Scouting, development, projections, it's just not there with goaltenders to speak with that much degree of confidence. The fact that he's that high really speaks to how good he is. He plays such a technically sound, calm game. His puck tracking is phenomenal. People talk about, oh, he's not the most athletic goalie in the world. He doesn't really need to be. He's kind of always in the right place. If you can get that solid, steady goaltender of the future, I'm all for it. I genuinely mean it, where if the Red Wings go with him at 6, I am all for it. I'm not concerned about the contract stuff. Steve Yzerman is one of the most adept GMs in the NHL in terms of locking in players at the right time for the right contract. So I'm not worried about 3, 4, 5 years from now. This could be the goalie of the future. And if they take him, I'm not upset about it at all. And coming in at 10 is Chaz Lucius. Again, another guy who could possibly play center for the Red Wings, coming out of the USNTDP. He's not the world's best skater, but I do really like his playmaking. And I really like how much he understands the offensive zone. I feel like he's able to pull the game to him, create space for the players around him. The way he plays the game plays like a center to me. So I think that he's smart enough to fit in that slot. Whether his skating will limit him in terms of how that translates to the NHL, that remains to be seen, but that's generally how I feel about Chaz Lucius. So that is my long-winded top 10.
Ooh, at Edvinsson.
Edvinsson came in at 11. I bumped him out of the top 10 very late. I mean it when I say these guys have been flip-flopping for a long time. Chaz Lucius got the center bump for me, but Edvinsson is very close.
I think mine starts a lot like yours. Owen Power, I've got number 1. I really like his game. I just don't see a world where he's not going to be picked as one of the top 2 players this draft. Number 2, this is who I took for Seattle last night in our mock draft, and that was Matty Beniers. I think he's the most complete centerman in this draft, and you know what UFA centermen go for in the NHL. It's a premium. Seattle would be wise to start their franchise with him as their top prospect. Moving on from there, Willie Eklund, I think you summed up exactly the reasons why I think he'll go number 3. Supremely skilled, and Anaheim could severely use that right now. Number 4, I had, I don't know where you had him, but I had Dylan Guenther at 4. I think he is a huge threat, whether it be through his playmaking or scoring. I know sample size was a little bit small this year, but man, I really like his game, and just for me thinking BPA, I think he's the 4th best player in the draft at this point. Number 5, I had Simon Edvinsson. This is where it kind of got tricky for me because I had
fight.
Who am I fighting?
Ryan, he had him outside of his top 10.
Yeah, this is where, things for me really could be in any sort of shape. Like, do I think a Dylan Guenther or a Simon Edvinsson or a Mason McTavish or a Chaz Lucius? Well, Chaz Lucius might be a little high for me at that rank, but I think there's so many guys you could start slotting in these spots. So the difference to me is very minuscule, but I had Simon Edvinsson here Number 6, I've got Kent Johnson. I think last night we summed it up very well. He's got a whole lot of upside, maybe the most in this draft. But there's a little bit of risk taking. But I think his game will turn into to NHL level, and I think he will be an excellent player. So I'm not too worried about him at 6, and I think he might be a decent pick for Detroit at 6. I haven't completely sold myself on who I think they'll take yet. Number 7, I've got Luke Hughes. I still think, like, with how good his skating is, and I think his defensive game is decent. If he finds some offensive flair at the pro level, I think he will be a top 4, potentially top 2 defenseman in the NHL, no problem. He looks a little bit like Luke, his brother Quinn, just a little bit bigger. I think he will be excellent at the NHL level. Number 8, Jesper Wallstedt. I contemplated putting him higher, but I have a very hard time, changing between who I think teams will take and who I think are the best players. I think Jesper Wallstedt's a top 3 player. I think he's one of the best goalies that we've seen in a long time. And in a draft where there's no consensus, well, there's a loose consensus number 1 and number 2. I think he could be right up there. He's so athletic and so positionally sound. Man, I think he's going to be an excellent goaltender in the NHL, and we'll be talking about where he goes in future years. Number 9, I have Mason McTavish. I like his game a ton. I think there's a lot of offensive upside at the pro level, and I don't see a world where he's going to fall outside of the top 10. And then number 10, I have Brandt Clark. I love his skating a little. I think there's still some work there, though. He was just another guy that I just didn't feel like I could keep outside of my top 10. So he's who I put at number 10. I don't think I forgot anybody.
No, you went top 10. A question before we get into Brad's rankings, or maybe Brad, you'll want to. No, Brad, you do your rankings first. And I have a couple comparison / scenario questions for you.
All right, so a little preamble before I get into my rankings, because obviously with this being a weird year, so many different factors going in, I myself trying to evolve as a prospect evaluator very unofficially. It was tough because I tend to favor forwards. I tend to favor high skill, high hockey IQ. Like I like the guys who can put points on the board traditionally. I find I've always had a history of I don't want to say overrating, but putting preference to forwards because it's what I know. If there's any position in the game of hockey I can be a quote unquote expert on based on my own experience, it would be forward. So I naturally gravitate towards them. But obviously I've tried to make a greater appreciation for defensemen, the defensive style of the game. These playoffs really showed to me the value of a player who can defend that isn't necessarily a high points guy. Philip Deneau, for one example, had a phenomenal playoffs, was tremendously effective, and one of the main reasons Montreal got to the Cup Finals, and he scored 1 goal the entire playoffs. So I really, really tried to factor that in so I wasn't putting a bias on myself, because obviously there's a couple players in the top 10 who fit that description of you love everything about their game, but you wonder what the ultimate true upside is. Actually, people are having that argument at first overall right now. So I really, really tried to take my own bias out of that this year so that I wouldn't just put, the top 5 scorers in their leagues at 1 through 5 and then call it a day. So that's kind of the thought process behind my rankings this year. All that being said, at number 1, I have, no surprise, William Eklund. So all this stuff that I've tried to add to my repertoire, I can't get away from my base of upside. He's you use the term 5-tool player as an analogy, and that's actually, I never registered that metaphor in my mind, but that's a great analogy for William Eklund. He plays with pace. He's got a high skill level. He's got a very high hockey IQ. He's got a very high compete level, and he is capable in all three zones. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, about his game I don't like. Because of his skill level, and especially because of his hockey IQ, I think his ceiling is much higher than he's given credit for. We've said on this podcast, throughout the course of this year, if Lucas Raymond was in this draft, we would take him first overall. Eklund outproduced Lucas Raymond in the same league. He was playing top line minutes on a men's, on a men's team in one of the best leagues in the world, and he was doing it well. And that was with missing the World Juniors due to COVID. So he had his obstacles this year. He did not have a smooth ride this year, despite the SHL running all year. The one thing I also wanted to make sure of my rankings is when it came down to a tiebreaker, or I was kind of flip-flopping on guys, I put myself in Steve Yzerman's shoes. What do the Red Wings value? Speed, hockey IQ, compete, and skill. Check, 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 check. William Eklund is exactly the type of players the Red Wings are trying to acquire. I have more faith in him being a center than I think most people. If I'm drafting him at 1 as a winger, I'm still doing it. So don't take this as, I'm picking him at 1 because I think he can be a center. He was a center for most of his life, and he possesses all the tools to be a center. Though his top end skating isn't elite, he is so good on his edges, and he plays the game so fast that I don't think that's going to matter all that much to him. So when it ultimately came down to who was I going to put at number 1, there's one player in this draft who I don't really have any question marks for around their game, and I love every aspect, or at least like every aspect of their game, and it was William Eklund. So once I really put that into context in my own head, I'm like, I can't not put him at 1. He's the player I like the most. That being said, number 2, obviously I have Owen Power. Now, I understand that if everything goes right for Owen Power, his ceiling is probably as high, if not higher, than William Eklund's in a different way, just because he's a 6'5" defenseman who can skate. He's got a great transition game, good hockey IQ, and, again, can play in all three zones. The difference between him and Eklund for me is what I've seen so far from him is none of the three zones are especially elite for him. Now, it's hard to say because he's a freshman playing in the NCAA, so under that context, he had a phenomenal season. And his raw tool package is so unbelievably rare to find that I understand the appeal. And if the Red Wings were picking 1 and they picked Owen Power instead of William Eklund, I'm not upset. I get it. I don't really need to get into too much detail about what makes Owen Power special because everybody's been beating it to death all year, and justifiably so. There's more questions to his game for me than I would like. But I don't think they're super huge concerns. He's gonna play. It's just, is he Victor Hedman? Is he Ryan Suter? Is he a little less? All three are probably equal possibilities at this point because of the skill set he possesses. Number 3, one of my preambles, I had him lower on my rankings, and over the last couple days I kind of changed it, is Matt Beniers. I don't love his offensive upside. I actually don't. I don't love it, but I actually think people sell it short at the same time because he doesn't score flashy goals, but he's effective. He doesn't make the flashy plays that a Kent Johnson or William Eklund are capable of doing, but he finds the simple play to make, and he does it well, and he does it fast. He's got a high processing power combined with incredible speed, and he is probably the only surefire bet at center in this entire draft. I don't draft for positional need. Never have, never will. But I know NHL teams are going to factor that in when this draft. And again, I don't think Beniers gets to 3. But yeah, he's he checks all the boxes just without the supremely high skill level. Number 4, I've got a run of University of Michigan players, 3 in a row. Kent Johnson. Anybody who listened to the mock draft Wednesday night, I did a lot of my talking on it there because this is who I selected for the Detroit Red Wings in the mock draft. Maybe not the highest upside in this draft because I think what the combination of everything Eklund has and can do and the combination of everything Power can do is higher than Johnson's skill set on its own because they have some of the other aspects that he doesn't have. But like if you're just talking pure talent, Johnson is the guy in this draft. I've seen him score a lacrosse goal while receiving a pass all in one motion. And I can't even begin to process how that's possible. That is one of the most incredible goals I ever seen scored. And he did that as a 17-year-old in the BCHL. And then he came to the NCAA as a freshman and put up huge numbers despite being built like a flagpole. I mean, most players his age can put on a lot of mass and a lot of muscle, so I'm not super concerned about how skinny he is. He'll get bigger, especially considering he's 6'1", so he's got the frame to work with. My concern is his pace going to pick up for the NHL level? That's it. That's my big concern. It's a valid concern, hence why he's not number 1 or 2 for me, because I think Power and Eklund can play, and Beniers even can play at a pace, and I have zero doubts that they can do that at the NHL level. Johnson, that's where that question mark starts to creep in, because he does play fast. He doesn't play slow, but he doesn't play as fast as those other guys. So I have to factor it in, even though the stuff he can do on the ice are like no other player in this draft. All right, so number 5 in my rankings, I want to preface this ranking by saying I never rank based on positional need. These are always just the best players in my mind. If you want to make a selection based on a team in any given spot, factoring in positional need as a tiebreaker, sure. But I am going by best player. The player whose overall skill set I determined to be this ranking. Number 5 for me is Mason McTavish. My big concern all year on him was the skating. That was it, but that's a major concern. It's why I haven't mentioned Brant Clark yet. But he is so good at every other aspect of the game of hockey. He walked into the U18s, a team he wasn't supposed to be the guy on, or even one of the guys. And he led that team when Shane Wright wasn't playing. He was the guy on that team. Even wore the C when Shane Wright wasn't playing. Elite shot, elite compete, elite hockey IQ, plays so well in the dirty areas. I don't want to say skating gets overrated for forwards, because it obviously is important, and McTavish isn't exceptionally slow. He's just not exceptionally fast. He's average. But you look at the NHL these days, there are a lot of guys who are super effective in a lot of the same ways McTavish is. The Tkachuk brothers, Ryan O'Reilly, Sean Couturier. Not that these are all exactly one-to-one skill set comparisons, but these are all guys who I would argue are below average NHL skaters. And they are all supremely effective. So I bumped McTavish up a couple spots just because I like every other aspect of his game so much that I think it'll translate to the NHL, and it'll translate well. And the fact that he likely projects as a center is just a bonus. So take that for what it's worth. Number 6, Dylan Guenther. His under 18s admittedly underwhelmed me. So there might be a bit of recency bias here, because he's a complete player. The phrase jack of all trades, master of none kind of fits here. I'd say his shot's about the only aspect of his game that's truly elite, but everything is above average. His compete, his skating, his hands, his IQ. He's a really, really damn good hockey player, and he's almost certainly going to be a top 6 forward in the NHL, but is he going to be the second best out of the top 6 forwards on the team, or the 6th best of the top 6 forwards on a team? I don't know, and I could see a reality where there's a lot of variance there, so it kind of kept me from bumping him up higher than I initially wanted to. But either way, he's my 6th ranked player. So if the draft goes by my board, he's the one the Red Wings get, and I'd be more than happy with that if that was the case. Number 7, Brandt Clarke. Holy shit, does his skating scare me? I can't get past it. He's quicker than his stride looks, but his stride is so fundamentally bad that I have serious concerns if he's ever going to get faster than he already is, because skating is not a skill that generally gets improved when they get to the NHL. Not dramatically anyway. All these conversations about, oh yeah, if this guy's skating improves, he's elite. I did a bit of research and went back and took a look at like a dozen guys who that was the knock on, and people were saying the same thing. None of them, the skating improved all that much. So I'm putting Clarke at 7 for the player he is, not the player that he could be changed into. But he's the best offensive defenseman in this draft, full stop. No doubt about it. The best power play quarterback, the most skilled. But the NHL's fast. And he's got to be able to defend. And if guys are just blowing past him wide and he's losing every race to every puck in his own zone, he could be a nightmare defensively. I think there'll be a role for him in the NHL either way. It wouldn't shock me if he's a number 1 power play guy and the number 6 even strength guy on a team. I think that's a realistic reality for him. Given his skill set, I think he'll slot higher in the lineup than that. But that possibility does scare me a bit, which prevented me from putting him in my top 5, even though I really wanted to. Number 8, Luke Hughes. As we talked about in our prospect profile, I still don't fully know what to make of him. Him missing out on the U18 sucked because I was hoping that would contextualize everything for me, and I never got that chance. The tools are there. Elite skater. He's bigger than his brothers. He's got good hands. I have questions about his decision making. I have at least some questions about a couple aspects of his game in all 3 zones. Too many question marks for me, and too big a question mark to really bump him up, because my top 7 guys, the one thing they all have in common is I don't question their hockey IQ. This is the first guy in my ranking I do. I could be wrong about it because, like I said, I wanted to contextualize everything. Didn't really get that chance on a premium stage, but I could see that going either way. So number 8 for me. Number 9, I thought I was going to be low on him until Ryan dropped the bombshell and put him out of his top 10. I'm still going to put Simon Edvinsson in my top 10. If he hits, he hits. If he misses, he misses. I have serious concerns about his pace of play, and he's big enough that he can make it work with a super high hockey IQ. Like Victor Hedman doesn't play exceptionally fast, but he's huge and he's got high hockey IQ, so he doesn't need to. That is a possibility with Edvinsson. Not to the same level as Hedman, but in that direction. However, that's a really damn big ask for someone to do in the NHL. He's a good skater, and I really wish he would use it more because he skates fast, but he doesn't play fast. And that frustrates the ever-living hell out of me every time I watch him. Every time I watch him, he leaves me wanting. You see the flashes. You see what everybody's talking about. I just don't see it nearly enough. And a lot of his deficiencies are really... He's really going to struggle when translating to the next level. And honestly, for a guy who's billed as an offensive defenseman, his production sucked this year at every level. So... relative to where a top 10 pick should be. So if Håkan Andersson sits here and picks him at 6 and believes in him, I'll believe in him because I trust Håkan way more than me, but god damn do I worry about him. Number 10, Jesper Wallstedt. I couldn't. He's too good. I will never advocate for picking him at 6. I won't be devastated if we do. I get it. The contract stuff aside, I don't base my rankings on all that stuff. That comes later. He's a goalie, man. Goalies are voodoo. We've seen so many first-round goalies flame out. If you pick a goalie at 6 and he flames out, that sets your rebuild back a year. Honestly, it sounds dramatic, but it does. When you are this bad as a team, you can't miss at 6th overall. If you pick a guy who you think is going to be a number 1C, but he turns into a second line winger, fine. That is still a move in a positive direction. If you draft a goalie and he never plays a fucking game for you, you blew it. You're toast. But from a skill level standpoint, who he is as a goalie, who he is as a prospect right now, he's elite. I've talked at length about him just reading the play so phenomenally well. You don't see him making those acrobatic saves all that often because he doesn't have to. The knock against him is that he doesn't quite have that elite athleticism and that lateral movement that you see out of like the Tim Thomases of the world. But so many pucks hit him in the chest because he's always in the right spot. He doesn't need to make those saves. It's the Carey Price effect. He makes it look easy, almost concerningly easy at points. He is an overager for this draft, for what that's worth. He's a late 02, so it's kind of harder to compare him to Spencer Knight and Askarov because they were 17 when they were drafted. He's 18, so you do have to factor in that extra year. But he was a top-end prospect at 17, so none of what happened this year is surprising, and he didn't come out of nowhere. Again, would I advocate for drafting him 6? No, that is a level of risk that I am not willing to take if I'm the GM of the Detroit Red Wings. But if they do it, I fully understand it. There's my top 10.
All right. Top 10. And you want to know what? Look at this
9 months in the making.
Look at this grouping. I think we named 8 players in our collective top 6s. That's pretty good, considering how wide open this is. So we named Power, Beniers, Eklund, Genther, Edmondson, Johnson, McTavish, Clark. Yeah, that's it. That was 8, right? Yeah.
I think the only true variance in our top 10 was you had Lucius in, Edmondson out. Evan and I had the inverse.
So I want to talk to you guys about 2 things with my rankings. The spots where I acknowledge I took the biggest risks and will make or break how, they're going to be the most glaringly obvious points if I get things dead wrong, is Kent Johnson and Simon Edmondson. Because I made inverse decisions on them based on the same parameters, and that's risk. I tried, for the sake of rankings, to say, yeah, I think this player will translate to some degree or is worth the risk, and this player isn't. I talked about the justification with Kent Johnson, but I feel like with Simon Edmondson, I should suggest it a little bit more, or I should elaborate a little bit more. His decision-making, his pace is, a concern. I can't shake the fact that the pace is as a result of the decision-making. Brad, you mentioned that the hockey IQ would have to carry you. I'm worried it's just not there at a level where it can, and you touched on that, right? So
yep, that's why I'm lower than the consensus as well.
If this guy hits, he should easily be top 4, and you can swap him with Kent Johnson very easily. And that's silly to say for my rankings. Oh yeah, switch 4 and 11, but that's genuinely how tight it feels. So much of the top 10, top 11, top whatever is dictated by risk. So when you see me put Simon Edmondson at 11, I can't even say confidently that he'd be the 11th best player out of this draft. That's never how drafts shake out, but for the sake of the exercise, it's that based on the risk, I would probably take 10 players before him if I'm the Red Wings, just because I'm not sure that Edmondson will pan out. But you know what? Someone could make the exact same argument for Kent Johnson, and I couldn't tell them that they're wrong.
If this draft if I made my rankings entirely on upside, it wouldn't look like it did. You have to balance the risk. Guys like Eklund and Power, there's not a lot of risk. Everything about their games is going to translate well to the NHL. The only question is to what level. Edmondson, a guy like Edmondson, there's a reality. He is a bottom pairing defenseman in the NHL, and probably not much of a factor. Like, that's a realistic possibility. But if he hits, oh man, does he hit? I could probably go a bunch of players on my rankings behind him who I think are less risky, but don't come close to his upside, which is why I still put him ahead of them. Because, yeah, if he hits, it's not going to be a small hit. Like, this is the overused term. This is the swinging for the fences pick if someone makes it, because he's huge, skates well, and he's decent, like he's got skill. So if that all gets put together in a left-handed defenseman, cha-ching. But yeah, the pace and the hockey IQ are two pretty goddamn big question marks.
Okay, I have some prompts here. I have some questions that I want to bring up. Relevant to Detroit, Mason McTavish is centerman version of Tyler Bertuzzi, or I guess souped up version of Tyler Bertuzzi, to steal a term from Max. Not exactly in playing style, but when you consider the qualities he brings to the team in terms of his effort, his willingness to get into dirty areas and play a physical game and drive offense or generate offense that way. Is that a fair assessment? And does that make him more attractive to the Red Wings and Red Wings fans?
I think the Bertuzzi and McTavish comparables is more an intangibles comparison. The compete and the willingness to go to the dirty areas, yes, absolutely. Bertuzzi's a complementary player. He can play off of the Larkins and the Zadinas of the world, can get to the right spot, clean up the rebounds, win the board battles, tip the pucks in. He's that guy. McTavish drives play. When the puck's on his stick, he's looking to make something happen. He can make a skill play through a player. He can make a tough seam pass. He has a shot that's light years better than Bertuzzi's. He can beat a goalie from distance. And honestly, I just think he's, in terms of hockey IQ, a smarter player than Tyler Bertuzzi, at least relative to age. So the intangibles is a very good comparison, but the tangibles, I think they're very different players.
Other players that Detroit might take, is there a discussion to be had? So obviously Eklund seems to be the favorite across the three of us in terms of who's most likely. We don't think Power or Beniers will likely drop based on how things are kind of coming along. How do you guys feel about the risk with Kent Johnson?
I'm fine.
Where are you? Okay, let's say they take Kent Johnson. They take Kent Johnson and they leave McTavish on the board. I know based on rankings, Evan would be okay with that. Brad, you had McTavish right behind Kent Johnson. McTavish is a little bit more of a sure bet in my mind in terms of what you're going to get as an NHL product, but Kent Johnson's ceiling far outpaces his. So you feel if it comes to the Red Wings pick and both Johnson and McTavish are on the board, you're clamoring for Johnson?
I'm not clamoring. I mean, these guys are separated by a hair, but if it were my decision, yes, I would take Johnson. It's harder to get a player like Kent Johnson. Players with his skill level, his vision, there's not many. They are rare. There's not many Nicholas Backstroms, Trevor Zegras. There's so few of them in the world. Not that McTavish isn't also hard to find, obviously being a center, but there's enough players like him in the NHL. Just I don't think most of those players are going to do it as well as he does. Hence why he's fifth in my rankings. I'm not going to be upset. Like if they're both available and the Red Wings take McTavish, I'm not batting an eye. I'm not shedding a tear. I'm not throwing out a complaint. 5 years, if Kent Johnson's popping off for 100 points and McTavish is a number 2C, I'll throw the complaints out then, but I don't think that's entirely likely either direction. So, yeah, it's an upside thing for me. I mean, like I said, if Johnson hits, there's a reality here. He's an 80, 90 point player, and there's not many. There's two players in this draft I can say that about. Two, him and Eklund. I don't think anybody else in this draft has that kind of offensive upside. That all being said, we've talked about what do the Red Wings look for in a player with their quote unquote, scouting guidelines. I think McTavish checks more boxes, but I'm not Yzerman. I get to make my own rankings.
All right. So between the three of us, let's make a prediction. Those were our rankings. Let's make a prediction as to what will actually happen on draft day. Just name the one player who you think will end up on the Red Wings. So you are both implicitly predicting who's going to go top 5. You don't have to bother listing all that. And then deciding for Steve Yzerman what player you think will be selected. So this is your official prediction. Who you think, not who you want, who you think will end up as a Red Wing at pick 6.
Am I allowed to talk through this? Because I'm still not fully sold on what each team is going to do.
You get a very limited time window. You get less than Evan's golf allotment per episode.
All right, so I got a minute. Okay, so let's assume that everybody's right. Power, Beniers go 1-2, which I don't think either is a guarantee. Let's be clear. But those seem pretty good. I'd be surprised if the Devils passed on Luke Hughes. Not that he's not a justified pick at 4, but the connection with his brother I think is good. Anaheim and Columbus are the wild cards. I have not really seen any tangible links to Anaheim. I've heard McTavish and Edvinsson to Columbus, but that's Yarmo, so that could be Wallstedt for all we know. That could be Corson Kuhlman's for all we know, but Yarmo ain't afraid to do whatever the hell he pleases. I could see Anaheim going Genther or Eklund or Edvinsson. I don't know. The way this is shaking down, I've got a gut feeling McTavish is going to be gone before the Red Wings pick. As much as I want to say, my gut's telling me he's not going to be there. I've kind of heard Genther to Anaheim. I've heard they like him and Edvinsson. So if Edvinsson goes there, I think McTavish goes to Columbus. If Genther goes there, I could see McTavish or Edvinsson going to Columbus. This feels pie in the sky to me. I think it's going to be Eklund. And I'll do a backflip. If we get my number 1 rated guy at 6, like, you won't be able to wipe the smile off my face for a week.
Brad, we haven't been able to wipe the smile off your face for 6.5 years.
Yeah, fair. Like, it seems insane to me because, like, I can't picture Eklund in my mind getting past Anaheim. I can't. But I've seen zero connection to him in Anaheim. I've actually seen a connection to him in Buffalo. So right now it might be more likely he actually does go 1 than 3. Then again, Buffalo might end up with the 3rd pick. Apparently the Ducks are in on Eichel, so maybe they get both. I don't know. If it's Anaheim picking at 3, I think the Red Wings end up with Eklund. If it's the Sabres picking at 3, I think the Red Wings end up with Genther.
All right, Evan, your prediction for who the Red Wings, what single player will they end up with at 6 overall?
I'll let you know that is more time than I get to talk about golf.
We'll make it up to you on a future episode.
Perfect, because this week is the British Open.
Oh, man. Actually, I'm into that too. So.
There's Bryson drama today, too.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we have to...
It's the driver's fault. If he's allowed to blame his driver, I'm allowed to blame my hockey stick.
All right. We'll triple your golf allotment next episode, Evan. But for now,
perfect.
That counted as 30 seconds of it.
Oh, damn it. Really, how I sort of see it shaken out is I think Owen Power will be off the board, Beniers will be off the board, Eklund will be off the board. That is my certainty, and that's sort of where it ends. Maybe not, 1, 2, 3, but before Detroit picks. I just have a feeling they're really going to like Mason McTavish. So that's who I'm going to take. Like, he's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. He could do a little bit of everything. He could maybe play center at the NHL level. I don't know what there's not to like about him at 6. And I just feel like Detroit will like that.
I am going to agree with Evan here. I understand your rationale, Brad. I genuinely think, though, that for a guy that's been so closely linked to the team drafting 1st overall in Eklund, that one way or another he won't be on the board. I think the Red Wings are going to be picking between probably McTavish, Kent Johnson, and then one of Genther or Edvinsson. And I think they'll go with the centerman. I just think there's too much need for the Red Wings to ignore that. The Red Wings reached hard to grab Moritz Seider because they were desperate in terms of top-end defensemen. So this is a team that understands what they need to do in their rebuild. This is a team that needs players who can almost immediately fill into those roles. McTavish won't be in the minors for terribly long in the grand scheme of things. I think it'll be McTavish on the board, and I think that is partially because of who he is as a player and how good he is in the position, and partially because because Eklund won't be there. I think they like Kent Johnson, but I think McTavish will get the risk or get the edge because of the playing the center position.
This is the draft that we said is so close. It wouldn't be egregious if teams picked based on positional need. And honestly, teams do that, and they've done that in the past, even if they don't admit it. There might be a team in this draft that's more center needy than the Red Wings. And they pick at 5. Again, I am not convinced McTavish makes it to the Red Wings. I think if he's there, I think that's the pick. That's the vibe I'm getting. I got a gut feeling if Edvinsson's gone, Jarmo's going to do it. I think Jarmo might even do it if Edvinsson is still there. Yeah, I don't know. Columbus is... We are needy at center in terms of high-end centers, but at least we can sit there and say we have Larkin, we have Rasmussen, we have Veleno. We have options that are young. Columbus, not so much. So if any team is picking a center out of absolute positional need, it's happening before Detroit.
I'm going to do something stupid here. I'm going to try to predict what Steve Yzerman is thinking. We highly recommend that you don't try this at home. This is advised against by all doctors. We have to have a special license to do it, and it will inevitably end up in failure. This is pure gut feeling. Haven't heard anything. This is nothing solid, so there's no sources here or anything. I think McTavish is well in play for the Red Wings based on how he fits their profile of who they're looking for, what they need. I think Eklund, obviously for the reasons Brad mentioned, and this isn't an exclusive list. I can't shake the Jesper Wallstedt thing. I really can't. I wouldn't call him the most likely pick, but if, the Red Wings have a pool of players, he's in the final group. That's just what I think about it. The Petrozelli, though that hasn't been officially confirmed still, that can't have helped things at all. I don't think it's going to sway them one way or another, but the goaltending is a massive, massive gap for this team. If they believe in him, if Håkan Andersson believes in him, he's in Sweden, and says, hey, this guy's a real deal, man, I think he's in the fold for Detroit.
He should be. He's that good. Again, I wouldn't do it, and I don't advocate it. I know Steve Yzerman has told us never read into anything he says, but that comment he had about not having a goalie in his top 10, that was kind of a throwaway comment off the cuff. I tend to believe him because it didn't feel like a calculated statement. It just kind of was something like an add-on to another statement. So that almost makes it more believable to me, even though I'm directly doing everything we've said all year not to do. I don't know. When I look at the players in the top 10, and we know the Red Wings have a type, they don't always stick exactly to this type, but we know they like fast, hockey IQ, compete. And fast doesn't necessarily mean skating. Playing fast would qualify. Who fits the bill of what the Red Wings would want out of the top 10 prospects? Power fits the bill. Beniers fits the bill. Eklund fits the bill. McTavish, Genther. That's it. Those are the only ones I can say with confidence. Everybody else has one of those boxes being a pretty big question mark. So if you want to look at the Red Wings' history as to what type of players they like and kind of try to fit a profile, so let's just assume Power and Beniers aren't going to be there. Eklund, McTavish, Genther are the guys who check the boxes. So I would almost certainly bet one of them is going to be there. And if it's only one of them, that might make it easier for them, but there's a good chance multiple are there for them, and then that might create an interesting debate. Now, that being said, if they have more confidence in the hockey IQ, now we can add Hughes and Edvinsson to this as well. We're three idiots at home saying, Luke Hughes, hockey IQ. Ugh. We don't know shit. They probably know more than I do. So if they think they have the hockey IQ, that's two more guys you can add to the possibility. I don't think they're going to like Brandt Clark's skating at all. I don't think they're going to love Kent Johnson's compete or his pace. So I don't want to go so far as to say I'd be surprised if they took either of them, just because those two guys are so good. But they're less likely in my mind to actually be the pick.
All right. That is a lot of analysis on the top 6 pick, or the 6 overall pick, the top 10 in general, what the teams around them might do. Let's chat a little bit about what might happen at 23rd overall, which is, again, the 22nd player off the board. The obvious answer to this question is whatever player in the top 10 happens to slip for one reason or another, or whatever player that's close enough. But I guess the question is here, who's realistic to think about in terms of who might slip, barring something crazy happening? And what are some best case scenarios? I know a name that has come to mind in the past has been Fedor Svechkov, but it almost seems like he's going too high. He's going to go too high based on who he is as a player.
After his U18s, I'll be shocked if he's there at 23. I think he's gone in the top 15. I don't think he's getting past 20. But thanks to a conversation we had with our friend Scott Wheeler before we hit the record button, before we interviewed him, and then which he followed up by putting in one of his most recent articles, we have a connection to the Red Wings and a player who is going to likely be available around pick 23, Francesco Pinelli. A centerman, high hockey IQ, high compete, questions about skating. We see him in Kitchener. I have him ranked right around this range. I really like Francesco Pinelli as a player. If he's the pick there, I'm thrilled. Based on where I have him in my rankings, there's probably going to be at least 1, 2, 3 players ahead of him that I would prefer, but perfectly justifiable. I think if the Red Wings do end up taking a winger or a defenseman in the top 10, they are going to try for a center here. I don't think Svechkov gets there, and there's not a lot of other options. So if Pinelli's there, he might be the quote-unquote default center, even though a lot of people aren't sold on him as a centerman. But the thing with Pinelli is he doesn't check the speed box the Red Wings look for. This guy is one of the smartest players in the draft, and he is super competitive, and he is always in the right spot. He had a very quiet U18s to the eye test. He was like 3rd on Canada in scoring. Like he outscored guys like Genther and other star players. Like he just gets it done.
I view Pinelli as a guy who has similar profiles in terms of what the risk is to players around the top 10. And if he does make an NHL roster, I think he could have a top 10 impact in terms of where he comes retroactively ranked in this draft. So yeah, I agree with you, Brad. I think this is a guy where, of course, there's a risk because of that skating, but in terms of what he can turn into offensively, I'm not banking on center here, but productive winger. Yeah, absolutely. And if he somehow turns into a center, then great. He's a guy who I'm not comfortable with at 6 overall, obviously, but 23rd. Yeah, I'm very happy with taking a swing there.
Yeah, and other guys that I probably will call attention to, just my personal favorites who I think will be there at 22, because obviously it's easy for me to sit here and say, Svechkov, obviously, I don't think he's going to make it that far. The guys I think are going to be there at 22 that I want the Red Wings to take a long, hard look at, regardless of who they take at pick 6. I'm a huge Logan Stankoven fan. I have him 14th. I think there's a chance he gets to the second round, but if he's sitting there at 22, I would absolutely take the swing on him. I like Sasha Pastujov, but I think you can maybe take a calculated risk to see if he waits it out till pick 38. I think that's a possibility. Brennan Othman, I think, might still be there, and he checks a lot of boxes for what the Red Wings need. And then outside chance Lambos gets there. I don't think it's super likely. And then, you might be looking at a decision between Atu Ratu, Pinelli, Rosen, guys like that. Looking at my top 22 ranking, there's going to be somebody I love available at that pick. So, yeah, it's interesting, but I think they're going to walk away with a really good goddamn player there unless they do something stupid.
Evan, who are some of your favorites? Hoping that you hope fall or you hope the Red Wings reach for even.
If you want a little bit of nostalgia, how about Aatu Räty? Räty?
Rat2, but you say Ratty and you kind of seem determined, so we'll let you have it.
Okay, thank you. I'm still not... Man, he has fallen down the draft board after he was pretty much the consensus number one pick maybe 365 days ago. I think there's still a lot to his game, and depending on who's there at 20 to 25, he could be a very interesting prospect, and I still think there's a lot of potential in his game to get to the NHL level. You guys have covered a lot of the guys I had on my list in that area. The one I don't think is there, but would maybe satisfy everyone, would be if Sebastian Cossa is still there. Because then we get who we want at 6, and then the goaltending conversation is finally put to rest. So from a mental standpoint, a mental wellness standpoint, that would maybe be the best. But I like Logan Stankoven too, and I've seen him kind of all over the board. And he could be a very good value pick at 23. Fedor Svechkov, we talked to him about him very recently in one of our prospect profiles. I think he's one of the best two-way centers in this draft. I don't think he'll be there, but if he is, I will be running to Detroit or to the draft to make the pick.
You're that close to Stevie.
Yes, we're on speed dial. Yeah, you guys kind of nailed it. Pinelli, Lambos would be a good pick in my opinion as well. Yeah, that kind of fills the list of where guys I'd be earmarking at 23.
How much does the positionality of the player drafted sixth overall, affect Detroit's game plan in your head for 23rd?
It doesn't. Honestly.
Not at all?
I think not.
No. You look at the players in this draft, I don't think there's going to be a player available who's even going to sniff the Red Wings for 2 more years. So you'll have 2 more drafts to address that need. Probably higher picks than this. So if they end up with 2 wingers here, cool. Take a center next year with your top 10. Like if you absolutely have to. We don't know what the Red Wings are going to look like 3 years from now. There's 1 player under contract on the Red Wings for that season right now. So, yeah, I think if you're picking 6th overall, most of those guys are going to be 1 more year in college, AHL, junior, whatever you want to call it, and then they have a chance to make the Red Wings. That will not be the case at 22, so just pick a guy. Pick your guy, position be damned. If you end up with 12 wingers out of this draft, cool. Solve the center and the left defense problem next draft. Then we don't know what the team's going to look like by the time these guys play.
Who are some of your absolutely do not draft these guys in the first round? And that's either pick 6 or pick 23.
Okay. 6? Wallstedt. No.
You couldn't help it, eh?
No, I couldn't. I don't really have a do not draft because my top 10, including Wallstedt, like I said, I think are all very reasonable at 6. And Yzerman's not afraid to go against the consensus, but I don't think there's a lot of guys outside of the top 10 that are going to get consideration there. So basically everybody on my list beyond Wallstedt probably is in that requirement for me. I don't know. I'm just looking down at lower in my rankings of guys who I'm seeing get first round consideration that I am definitely not in first round consideration for. So just going to rhyme through some names here. Kirill Kirasanov, really safe pick. Don't love the upside there. Stanislav Svozil, don't see the upside there. Daniil Chayka, huge risk. Don't know if I want to be the one to gamble on that. Other than that, I think there's a lot of reasonable options there. Like those 3 guys I mentioned, I wouldn't take them in the first round, but I think they're all perfectly legitimate second round options. And if we took them in the second round, I'm not going to bat an eye at it. But those are the 3 that I've seen hover around the 20s in most rankings, and I would advise against it.
Detroit's in a unique position with pick 23 because they have a lot of picks behind it with some good weight. I mean, they have 3 second-round picks, multiple picks in the rounds after that. They have the tools and they have the resources to move up. Generally, trading back is advisable for maximizing the amount of picks that you're going to make, especially in a draft where you have to add a lot of good players. But let's say Svechkov is sliding to 17 or 18. You think the team at 19 is going to take him. And this is a pure hypothetical. I'm not even looking at who's drafting there. Do you trade, an additional second round pick as well as pick 23 to move up? Are there trade scenarios? This is part of a broader question. Are there trade scenarios even outside of this Svechkov hypothetical where you guys think that the Red Wings should or would do so this year?
Is there hypotheticals? Yes. Are they likely? No. I love Svechkov. I have him very high on my rankings, which I'll go through the rankings later, but looking quickly, I have him at 13. He'd have to fall 5 spots. That's not crazy. I don't think there's that big a gap between a guy like Svechkov and a guy like Ratu or Pinelli to justify giving up a good asset for. If Svechkov falls to like 20 and you can use like a third rounder to move up, sure. Third rounders are not all that likely to turn into NHLers and you have 12th. The first 5 picks, I don't want to see them throw away to trade up. I would use them maybe for a trade back, but I think the 2 firsts and the 3 seconds, they have to make those picks. Whether it's at that exact spot or not, they need to make 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. But just because they have so many holes in this organization, so many. But yeah, no, the only way I'm throwing a premium asset to trade up is if, God, none of the top 9 guys are going to fall. If a Wallstedt or a Lucius or a Sillinger starts going down, maybe then you consider it. But again, looking at my rankings here, picks 11 to 29.
Shit.
Yeah, picks 11 to 29. I don't think there's all that significant of a gap. Obviously, there's a gap, but it's not dramatic. And then you factor in the uncertainty of this year. Yeah, I don't think this is the draft worth trading up in at all, unless there's a guy in like the 3rd round that you're like, fuck it, he's the next Braden Point. Pardon my French, but. Let's go. We'll kick in 2 5th-round picks. Who cares?
You named I think including Svechkov, you named 4 guys. Oh, actually, you named 3 of the 4 guys who I would actually consider moving up for. I never thought I'd say that. Svechkov, Lucius, I think based on where I have him ranked and what I think he can do, possibly at the center position. Cole Sillinger is not a player that we've talked about, and I can't decide whether he's going to move way up the board or way down the board, but I have a feeling he'll be one of the 2. And to pick up a shooter like him, a guy with that kind of shot, what he did in the USHL and the way he demonstrated his shooting ability across the board, incredible. And I would absolutely feel okay with giving up some assets to move up to get him. So Svechkov, Lucius, Sillinger, Sebastian Cossa. Breaking it down, spending a first and a second on a goalie, yeah, not great asset management. But if somehow it's not a first and a second, it's just that first and something a little bit lesser. If Yzerman can get a little bit creative with that deal, I'm happy to take a risk on Cossa. I know not everyone is super high on Cossa. I think it was Kat Silverman said she doesn't even think Kossa's the second best goalie in the draft like he's been touted to be, but some people think he might be even better than Wallstedt. I don't know. But I'm happy to take that risk to fill that part of the Red Wings depth chart. I really didn't think leading into this draft that I'd be an advocate for trading, but there are players who strike me where if they're falling and I view them as a potential top 10 in this draft, yeah, absolutely. So outside of, the obvious, guys who we have ranked pretty firmly in the top 10, There are a few who I'd make that consideration for. I don't know. How about you, Evan?
Sorry, I'm getting yelled at by Fred right now.
Fred is Evan's butler, actually.
There he is.
That meows. There he is, the cat tax.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're going to have to edit like crazy if he has any more words for me. I guess it depends what the ask is, right? There's guys, for sure. I think if there's any draft where there's going to be some irregularities and some chaos, this is the one. I kind of echo the same feeling you had about Kosa. Like, do you trade your first and a second to move up and get him? Man, that's risky. But, taking Moritz Seider at 6 felt like a big risk to me as well. So if they think he's their guy, then he's their guy. Other guys I would potentially move up for, Fedor Svechkov would be one guy. Like I said, he's a 200-foot complete player. If he's still there, I would be very, very interested in moving up. I think there's going to be a bunch of guys that slide down the board, and it's hard to earmark exactly who those guys will be. But I bet there'll be a lot of fan bases at the 20 or the 19 to 25 spot banging at on their coffee table trying to get their GM to make a trade to get one of those guys. Would I do it? It all depends on who's there. You always get better value trading back, so I'd prefer that move if they like a few other guys still available. I don't know. I'm not a huge move up guy, but I could definitely see it happening this year. Okay.
The obvious answer to the trade scenarios is it really depends on who's there. I guess it's just whether or not you're more of a stout, don't do it at all, it's not worth it. Or, I would love to see a trade, and I would love it for it to be 2022 or 2023 first round picks. That's the trade I want to see. But yeah, it's really wide open.
What numbers are the Red Wings pick in round 2 again? 38, 50. What are they again? Do you remember?
38, 48, 52.
Okay. So I'll just throw a trade scenario at you. What historically a move like this would have to be if you're jumping up to like a 17 or an 18. And I'll use players as a specific example. So I will just straight up we'll go for Svechkov. We'll use him as the hypothetical. I'll give you my 23rd ranked prospect and my 48th ranked prospect. So would you trade... Oh, sorry, I guess it would have to be my 22nd ranked prospect. Would you trade Carson Lambos and Wyatt Johnston for Fedor Svechkov?
Sure.
I don't know how big I am on Wyatt Johnston, so yeah.
Okay, I'll go one tick in each direction here. Would you trade Francesco Pinelli and William Stromgren?
That gets dicey for me. Gets dicey for me at that point. I understand. No, it is fine margins. And once you break it down, you're giving up a first and a second for it's hard to conceptualize it. There's so much uncertainty.
And that's even if this draft goes reasonably. I have seen multiple mock drafts from multiple outlets with no connection to each other who have had Fabian Lucel falling to the Red Wings at 22.
Yeah, would be thrilled with that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think there's a ton of reason to trade up in this draft because as much as you fall in love with a guy, there are 10 guys just like him in this draft once you get outside of the top 10.
All right, those are some trade scenarios. Why don't we talk about your broader rankings, Brad? So not with the same amount of depth that we went through the top 10, but just walk us through quickly here. Let's say your top 38. Why don't you list them off?
Okay, and then if you want have a comment about any of them, just tell me to stop. So we know my top 10, so starting at 11, Chaz Lucius, 12, Cole Sillinger, 13, Fedor Svechkov, 14, Logan Stankoven, 15, Nikita Chibrikov, 16, Matt Coronado, 17, Sasha Pastujov, 18, Fabian Lucel, 19, Brennan Othman, 20, Corson Kuhlmans, 21, Sebastian Cossa. 22, Carson Lambos. 23, Atu Ratu. 24, Francesco Pinelli. 25, Isaac Rosen. 26, Xavier Bogo. 27, Ville Koivunen. 28, Samu Tuamala. 29, Zach Leroux. 30, Zach Bolduc. 31, Samu Salminen. 32, Oscar Olesen. 33, Maki Samoskevich. 34, Simon Robertson. 35, Scott Morrow. 36, Ayrton Martino. 37, Sean Behrens. 38, Zach Dean.
So, tell me again who number 22 was?
Carson Lambos.
So if the NHL draft goes as per your rankings, Dylan Guenther, Carson Lambos, Sean Behrens would be who the Red Wings would walk away with, theoretically.
Yes.
That is not a bad haul. That's not a bad haul.
I would say that would be a successful draft, first round.
Any of those guys you view as being likely to fall to pick 48 or beyond?
Beyond that, I think Ville Koivunen is probably the highest guy on my board who has a shot to go that far. With all the character questions around Zach Leroux, it would not shock me. I think there's a chance Samu Salminen goes that low. I could see Scott Morrow, Ayrton Martino, Sean Behrens all going that low. Those were probably the only ones, though, that I could see that happening on.
I have a lot of trouble, talking about players beyond the second round. I'm going to be honest, so much of my work was focused just on the top 10 because I had a lot of difficulty with the sixth pick. Not just the sixth pick, but ranking the top 10, that once you get into the second round, it's like, what are you even doing here? It's like piloting a ship in the middle of the ocean at dark. You don't know what direction you're going in. I'm more blind this year than I have been in a lot of previous years. So in general, I really just look at first round rated prospects that will likely be there in the second round. And we've seen in years past, every single season we've covered the draft, the Red Wings have had multiple players who we viewed as potential late first, early second round prospects available to them in the mid to late second, possibly third rounds, and they don't take them because that's just the way the draft goes. You cannot be predictive. It is so insanely wide open once you get past the first few picks. But there is going to be a world of opportunity there. I can't help but think that the Shibrikov pick that we've mocked to the Red Wings a couple times is how it's actually going to shake out, though, at pick 23. Just put it.
I'd be thrilled. In my rankings, that'd be 7 spots worth of value because I only have him 2 spots behind Svechkov. So if Shibrikov falls that far, I'm over the moon.
All right. So those are some second round targets. Those are the broader rankings there. Any players, I guess, before we talk about some other teams and then getting into overtime here, who are your darlings? Who are the guys, at any point throughout the draft, if they're a top 10 player, if they're, second round, if this is like a mid-round player who you just really, really like, who is a player that you would be thrilled if the Red Wings walked away with them just because you like them the most personally?
Logan Stankoven, Francesco Pinelli, Ville Koivunen. I'll stick to 3.
I'm surprised you didn't say William Eklund, honestly.
Oh,
yeah, I
I'm
guess
not counting
it's the
top
easy
10
one.
guys. That's a boring answer. He's my number 1 ranked prospects. No shit, I'd be thrilled if the Red Wings walked away with him. Oh yeah, last year I'd really like it if the Red Wings walked away with that Lafreniere guy. I've heard good things.
How about you, Evan?
I will echo the Chibrikov conversation. I think if he's available at 23, wow, I would cry if they didn't get them, and I don't show any emotion. I'm starting to really, really like the Mason McTavish pick, so I'm going to say McTavish, Chibrikov. Hell, I'll even be excited about Ratty at this point. And if somehow Edmonton doesn't take Cossa and Detroit has him there, I'll put him in the list as well. Those are my darlings.
If the Red Wings pick up Sean Behrens in the second round, I'd be pretty happy. He's a guy who I keep circling back on.
He's out of everybody I have. So I've got a tier of prospects where the ranking ends at 38, and then there's a bit of a gap for me. Barons is one of the last guys I have in that tier. He's probably got the biggest question mark for me of everybody in that tier. And that tier goes up to about the mid-20s. But holy shit, if he hits, he's going to hit. Like, that is a swing for the fences. You're hoping you get Torrey Krug out of that. And it's not all that unreasonable to expect that could be possible for him, because he's tiny, but he's dynamic. So if he can defend competently at the NHL level, that's a really goddamn big if. He could be a hell of a pick.
Fedor Svechkov, for obvious reasons. And we've talked about that. We did a profile on what he could be as a centerman. Corson Kuhlmans is another player. I mean, right-handed defenseman, not necessarily a guy who will even be on the Red Wings in terms of need. I don't think he falls there, but if he does, that's a player I'm really happy with. And I can't shake how fun Kent Johnson would be if he panned out. I'm not going to advocate for Johnson over Eklund, Beniers, or Power, that like those guys I have ranked ahead of him. But if they went with Kent Johnson, it is a hugely risky pick. There is such a potential to bust there. I understand. Like, I couldn't sleep confidently knowing that he'd pan out, but man, it would be so fun if he did, and I just can't get away from that. The Michigan connection is there. The amount of skill that he would bring to the table is there. It's hard to advocate to bring in that kind of guy where you're like, does he need a supremely talented center to really unlock him and allow him to play his game? Yeah, maybe. And the Red Wings lack that, but I don't know. I try not to get too buried into projecting too far out into who the Red Wings are going to have and whatnot. Like, that's impossible to really predict accurately. Kent Johnson, to me, I'm all for swing for the fences, because screw it. We've had a shitty couple of years in life. The Red Wings have had a shitty 5, 6, however many years in this rebuild. Kent Johnson could change things. The Kent Johnson that translates to the NHL could change things. So he is my biggest fanboy. Yeah, I would be thrilled if they get him.
I dig it.
All right. Final note here before we jump into overtime. Let's talk about what other teams might do. Buffalo is often, pinned to take Owen Power by other people, but they have interest in Eklund, and they have interest to make moves. They're trading Reinhart. They're trading Eichel, like both of those guys in all likelihood. They're going to try to pick up more assets in this draft. And they're going to try to turn this rebuild around quick, because if not, the fans in Buffalo might burn the arena down. They might get into the top 10 again. They might try to swing both Power and Eklund. They might just take Eklund first overall. So on that note, what are some predictions you guys have for other teams that either are solid or you think could be off the board, but in the realm of reality for you?
Yarmo goes full YOLO. Like, he's the one. I could see it. You laugh. I could absolutely see it. I could see the Red Wings doing that too, for whatever that's worth. Yzerman's not afraid to go off the board, and if he does, that would be the guy I could see it happening for. I don't know. It's tough because everybody seems to have Owen Power consensus number one, except Buffalo only interviewed him for the first time like a week ago. There's been connections to Buffalo and Eklund, which obviously based on my rankings, I would fully support if I was a Sabres fan. I don't think they will. I think it's going to be Power 1. I think it's going to be Beniers 2 but to me, Seattle's the big wild card as well, because, it's obvious you want to start your franchise off with a center. But Beniers isn't like the mega crazy high upside center. Like, is Matt Beniers the face of a franchise?
My hot take is that Seattle takes Wallstedt.
I could see it. I legit could see it. I wouldn't bet on it, but it makes sense. He's got star power. He's got that holy shit factor that Matt Beniers doesn't have. More question marks, but Seattle's got a blank slate. They do not give at least they should not give a crap about position. Because they need it all. Yeah, I don't know. I I feel like for any time we feel like something is going to be crazy unpredictable, the exact opposite happens. So I think it's going to be Power. I think it's going to be Beniers. I've seen a lot of connections. I think I mentioned it already with Anaheim and Genther. Not a lot. I've seen some. Okay, that makes sense. They have a lack of scoring. I think the New Jersey Hughes connection makes a lot of sense. The only two names I've heard connected to Columbus are McTavish and Edvinsson. So great, sure. And then with Detroit, the only connections I've heard are McTavish and Wallstedt. But I want to say the two most commonly connected names to the Red Wings last year were Perfetti and Askarov. So don't read too much into that. There was almost nothing connecting Lucas Raymond to the Red Wings, and there was definitely nothing connecting Seider to the Red Wings until the Red Wings got on the phone with the Canucks a couple hours before the draft. So
yeah.
So I take all of these with a huge grain of salt. I hope it gets silly season. I hope Svechkov goes at 5. I hope Edvinsson goes at 2. I want this to be as weird as possible to the point where Eklund falls to the Red Wings. But yeah, I want max entertainment value for the rest of the draft, and there is very much the potential to have that here, because you've got a team that doesn't always go with the consensus at number 1. You've got a team with a complete blank slate at number 2. You've got a team with a lot of different needs at number 3, and you've got a madman at number 5. So I've heard the predictions, I've heard the connections. I don't really buy into them, so I am prepared for everything.
Yeah, just some context, and this is a little bit of background. We don't usually talk about this kind of thing, but really to drive home how hard it is to get reliable information on the Red Wings. This isn't trying to toot our own horn. It's nothing like that. I promise you. We had actual sources, multiple, in the Ken Holland era. It's just the reality of it. And that's not to speak to, Holland's management style or anything like that. No, I have enough criticisms of Holland's, actual hockey ops decisions to pin this on him. It's more a testament to how tight of a ship Yzerman runs, and it is ironclad. I can count on less than one hand the amount of reliable pieces of information we've had that have not come through other teams. Like Brad mentioned, the Moritz Seider thing came out because the Red Wings were essentially trying to trade back to justify the value to take Moritz Seider instead of where they did, maybe a 9th overall. I think that's where Vancouver was, or, in the Vancouver-Edmonton range. It was the Vancouver side of things that leaked it. In terms of getting things directly from the Red Wings, it almost never happens. We have barely ever seen it personally in terms of our sources. It is extremely difficult. And it's not just us. You might say, okay, we're just podcasters, and that's true. Look at the actual insiders for the NHL. Look how much Red Wings news has fallen off of a cliff. And if you're a Red Wings fan, it makes for some dull times because there aren't as many rumors, but it is a good thing. I'm happy about that because it means that it's a tight operation. It is a strict operation with high expectations of employees. So yeah, I have a lot of belief in what Yzerman's doing, and it's a sign that he is running a good show. But when people tell you they have concrete information, please take that with a massive, massive Brad's head size grain of salt. So, Evan, your predictions in terms of what other teams might do, maybe some off the board stuff that might happen. I think there are going to be a lot of trades. That's another thing I'll put out. I think there's going to be a lot of first round trades here.
I think there'll be a lot of draft floor activity, whether that be actual trades materializing or just a lot of kicking the proverbial tires. How do you predict chaos? I don't know. Well, when you got Jarmo Kekalainen drafting in the top 5, that always aligns for some potential chaos, as well as Buffalo could have some chaos at 1 too as well. So, and we don't know what Seattle will do because they're a new team. What's their direction? What's their focal point in building a team? I'm not too sure yet. So I think if we're going to see chaos, it's going to start early and it will set the table for the rest of the first round, maybe early second. I can't really narrow anybody down who I think will do something crazy, Columbus is the one that always sticks out to me because Kekalainen just does not care for what people think is the consensus, and he will just do it. Maybe I would even lump Detroit into that, because when they have their guy, they go for it, as we saw with Seider. So yeah, I guess that's sort of a roundabout way of saying I'm not too sure. But I would imagine there will be lots of noise and lots of discussion and activity. Oh, there's Fred.
Sounds like he's just saying, hey, Evan.
He is just saying that because he wants his dinner or his nighttime wet food.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we're on a strict schedule.
Oh, anyways, sorry, keep going.
That was just like a roundabout way of saying there could be, there could not be, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is, given the unpredictability of this draft.
All right, so while you guys were talking there, just for funsies, I went to a mock draft simulator and put the randomness setting to about average. And I did a first 2 rounds mock. And this is what the Red Wings walked away with. Kent Johnson, Matt Coronado, Sasha Pastujov, Sean Behrens, Ville Koivunen.
I don't think Matt Coronado makes it there, so I'd be thrilled. That is an incredible haul. I would be over the moon with that haul.
I don't think any of those, I think out of all of those, the least likely is Coronado at 23. I would not be shocked if Pastujov is there at 38. I would not be shocked if Behrens is there at 48. I would not be shocked if Koivunen's there at 52. Like I said, I have Koivunen ranked 27, but he's a guy you could almost make a calculated gamble on because he's not very high on very many rankings. So, yeah, it's like I have 4 guys drafted here in my first round and 1 guy just inside my second round. So, and that's 5 picks deep. That's the type of draft it's going to be, though, overall. Like I said, I think right now we have a pretty good feel for the top 15-ish from what everybody's been reporting, everything that's coming out. But yeah, I think once it gets past that, it's chaos. We are going to see so many Mukamadulin picks this year.
One last question here before we jump into overtime. There's a ton of swing for the fences talent in the first round at the top 10. And that's not to say like all those guys are over the moon incredible players, but they come with high risk, but the high ceiling reward might be there if you develop them well. This is a roundabout way of saying, does Matthew Beniers get pushed down the order to pick 6 in any likely scenario in your head? And if so, is he an automatic pick for Detroit?
Unless Eklund falls, he should be the automatic pick because Power's not falling down that far. I don't think it's likely. Center is the position teams always reach for. So, I mean, if people are going to reach for a center, they're sure as hell not going to pass up on the guy who's just there.
All right. Any final notes before we jump into overtime on the 2021 NHL Draft?
Prepare for chaos, I hope.
All right. So that is our NHL Draft preview. If you thought that this year's draft previews seem different than other years, please know that that is a product of how hard it was to evaluate this year's draft. But we hope you guys enjoy it. It won't be the last of our draft talk. We do have one more episode coming before the NHL draft. That is on Wednesday. That is going to be mainly expansion draft, but if there's any draft news, we will be mentioning it there. This is also a good time to say before the expansion or before the overtime segment here, we are going to be giving away a prize to a Patreon supporter, and that is a signed Henrik Zetterberg stick. So a Henrik Zetterberg stick that's been signed by Hank himself, the actual Henrik Zetterberg, not Brad's son Hank. And we'll be giving that away to a random patron after the draft recap episode. So that's just our way of saying thank you to our patrons. That's been a prize that we've been excited to give away for a little while. There are giveaways to come. Again, just as an idea for the schedule coming up, Wednesday, the 21st, we have the expansion draft live stream. So tune in on YouTube for the live stream as we cover the expansion draft. And then there's an episode recording and dropping straight afterwards. Friday, the 23rd, first round NHL Draft live stream. On Saturday is the Patreon exclusive stream / hangout for the rest of the draft. And on Sunday is our draft recap episode. So lots to come on that front. All right, let's jump into overtime here. Our patrons are the reason we were able to spend the time building out our evaluation, analysis, resources, etc. on draft prospects. So our Patreon supporters are really the heartbeat of this show. So thank you all so much. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support and be considered as part of the draw for that Henrik Zetterberg stick. Thank the Lord for Brad Crisco. Never mind. I take back every nice thing I said about patrons because that's a stupid name. I wasn't saying that. It's literally the first patron's name who said that. Thank the Lord for Brad Crisco says, the Flyers seem to be making it clear that their first round pick is available. Should Stevie try to trade for it to give us 3 firsts, or will Philly likely have to keep it to give it to someone as a sweetener for taking on the Voracek contract?
I don't think so. Voracek's still a good player. He's I forget where I was listening to today. It was probably Friedman. Said that it's more likely than not Voracek ends up in Philly next year. So it's not like they have to move him. But what does Detroit have worth the 13th overall pick? Like, that would have to be something centered around Bertuzzi. I don't think there's anything else that they could have in play. I think, to be fair, I think Philly was one of the teams I heard poking around on Bertuzzi. So it may be possible, but I wouldn't call it overly likely.
Okay. Moving on. Nick Gayer says, hey fellas, I've been trying not to get overhyped about Seider. So what are 3 realistic expectations for him as he gets ready for his debut? If you want like a muted, realistic expectation, like you're not talking best case scenario here. He is the Red Wings acting number 2 defenseman. He eats a ton of minutes. He plays a strong shutdown game, and he is able to fill in on the second power play.
Don't be a train wreck defensively.
He wants the 3rd. So Evan, your realistic expectation for Seider?
Oh man, Jeff Blashill's the coach, so who the hell even knows what he'll do? Plays second pairing minutes. Helps on the power play, second power play unit, plays some penalty kill. Isn't noticeably poor. You know, if we don't see him for the first real 10 games, I think that's a huge win.
All right. Patrick Modrowski says, I know most Wings fans are hoping for Eklund, but I want Kent Johnson badly. I feel that kind of top-end skill is hard to pass on in a draft like this. One thing I noticed about him is that that isn't talked about at all is his elite ability to create time and space for himself and his teammates when he has the puck. It's beautiful to watch. This next comment is from Cayman Cider. Cider with a C says, just want to thank you guys for everything you do. As a 3rd shift truck driver, you make my Wednesday and Sunday nights a bit more enjoyable while driving. Mr. Cider, thank you for tuning in. We're happy to be able to help. Cody Stark says, my daughter eats, sleeps, and shits. She's her father's daughter. Who would this year's Cider be? The guy that's rated by the majority of pundits to go 15 to 25 that ends up going 4 to 8. Ooh.
From, again, not my own opinion, just from what I've kind of read from other bigger, more prominent outlets in the know. Svechkov or Kuhlman's.
Kuhlman's was someone for me who I thought, yeah, that might be it. Coronado, I don't know where he's typically placed. Some people have him, closer to 10 than 20, but Coronado's another guy who I can see sneaking into the top 10. Okay. Bill Nye the Thigh Guy says, hey there, Dub boys. Do you think the Keith move has set the precedent for trades this offseason, or will it be seen as an outlier? As a scientist, I think this is an outlier. Second question is, when will Brad do another Gear Talk episode? Loving the interviews and guests you're bringing on to make this offseason good. Cheers, boys.
Very, very soon to your second question. And to your first question, I think it's an outlier. One, look who's involved. And 2, I think that trade was made mostly on the intangibles. And honestly, there are not many players around the league who have the intangibles, Stanley Cup rings, that Duncan Keith does.
Yeah, we'll get back into non-draft stuff once we are able to get through the next couple of weeks, sleep for 1 billion years, and then wake up and then get back into that fun content. Polish Thunder says, hey guys, who says no to this trade? Wings take on the last 3 years of Martin Jones at $5.75 million per year, with Thomas Bordeleau as a sweetener, and Detroit sends a late round pick, 5th to 7th, back to San Jose. Love the idea of getting another promising U of M player and also having Jones in net for Detroit. Almost guarantees the best draft odds for Shane Wright.
I think Detroit says no. I don't think they want to tie themselves down to anything longer than a year or 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a knock on Bordeleau as a prospect, but 3 years at 5.75 when they got a second round pick for 1 year of Stahl at that essentially the same price. That's hard. That's a really hard ask for Detroit. Stephen Fairbrother says, hey guys, I'm a longtime listener from New Brunswick. It's hard to have meaningful conversations with other Red Wings fans around here, so you fill a huge void. For the draft, if you had to choose, first of all, thank you for your support, and it always means a lot to us when we can help connect Wings fans from afar, because, I mean, in a way, that's what we are. For the draft, if you had to choose, would you rather take Johnson and Svechkov or Eklund and Kosa? I find all the D, including the consensus number 1, sketchy, but after the what the Ferk Cider draft night, I'll trust whoever Yzerman picks at this point. Thanks a lot and keep up the good work. That is a very good hypothetical. I'm going to go with Johnson and Svechkov here because I'm big on Johnson, and I think Svechkov could be I think he could play 2C behind Larkin or be Red Wings 2C.
I hate this podcast because all I took from that statement was that you're big on Johnson.
I'm huge on Johnson.
I hate everything that I am. My initial gut reaction here would be to just take the one with Eklund because he's my top ranked prospect, and I have Kosa ranked right around that 22 mark. But if I add up if I just go rudimentary math, 1 and 20, and then for Johnson and Svechkov, that would be 17. So on value, I'll go Kent Johnson and Fedor Svechkov.
I'll take it was Eklund and Kosa, right?
Yeah,
those are the other. I'll take those. Eklund for obvious reasons, and Kosa fills a direct position of need in the goalie pipeline.
All right, Tony Hattress is just writing in with something that's both amusing to me and causing me some struggle. Last week, I started taking a bachata class, which is a dance class if you're unfamiliar, with my fiance because she was really excited about it and I wanted to make her happy. Good man. However, I'm struggling to take it seriously because the primary instructor is a dead ringer for Brad, albeit slightly younger and less stacked. He even makes everything a dad joke. Between that being in my head and both of us not being natural dancers, our progress has been slow but still fun. Anyways, thought you might get a laugh. I'll make sure I tweet you a picture from our next lesson if the guy's cool with it. That's hysterical. I would not survive that class.
Yeah, that sounds like a dead ringer for me, except the skill that I am the worst at on the face of this planet is dancing. So it's the only part about it that's doesn't line up.
I can't even envision you trying to dance.
It's for the best. I don't think anybody's ever envisioned it because I've never, tried.
I can't make fun of anyone because I'm the exact same as you. I can't dance at all.
As someone who went to Brad's wedding, I'll tell you guys, he's not kidding. He not only can't dance, but he doesn't. When he's drunk, he just kind of runs in a direction towards someone and then talks at them excitedly. It's just Brad, but faster.
It's Brad in avoidance mode. Oh, there's a song playing. People want to dance. Cool. I'm going to get a drink. Oh, this guy looks like he's bored. I'll talk to him.
Colorado 14er says, who, in your opinion, of the current Red Wings, Griffins, or draftees would be the first to hang up on Steve Yzerman after receiving less than news, and how bad would that news have to be?
The Red Wings, Bertuzzi? Maybe
Bertuzzi.
He's
the only one
of
that
the
came to
rumors.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. The Red Wings don't have any attitude guys. have that guy that's been with the team for so long that it would come as a complete and utter shock outside of Larkin, but they're not getting rid of him. Yeah, I don't have a good answer here, so I'll say Bertuzzi.
I think not because he has an attitude thing, but imagine the shock Larkin would get if he was traded. That would probably be tough. The actual Terry says, I'm of the opinion that swear words are indeed arbitrary and it's stupid that it's a thing in society. However, the fact that they're taboo is what gives them their power. Seriously, did you know that using a swear word can increase your strength when doing things, and it's purely because it's taboo and causes some crazy chemical release in your brain? But I digress. Also, still looking for these cheese bags. I'd like to file a complaint to the podcast manager since I've been censored. Stay Fresh Cheese Bags is a running joke that started from Joseph, one of our patrons and listeners and friends, and is something that he just brought in because someone said it. Like, that's something I'm going to say when someone leaves the room, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, and he just brought it in, and then I got taken literally, partially through him and Rowan, and turning them into actual cheese bags. Anyways, if that sounds stupid and way too inside jokey and meta, I mean, it is, but we love it. On a more serious note, Ryan, what's next on A Night In with Ryan Hanna? Oh, it'll be a retrospective on burnout during the pandemic and how the we're busier when we're locked down. That's what the next Night In with Ryan Hanna is about. If you guys can't tell, I need a nap. Brad, what are the odds of Seattle taking Hirose in the expansion draft?
Slim to none.
Evan, please stop talking about golf. Otherwise, great job.
Thank you.
Ruthless and Toothless says, I think we should all cheer for Ottawa this year. We owe them a debt of gratitude for taking Pierre off the air. Literally one of the most ignorant broadcasters I've come across. I'll never forget the time he said F1 wasn't a sport and the drivers weren't athletes. Live on air. Thanks, Pierre Maguire, for the fond memories. I bid you adieu with my two birds held a high. Next comment is from Hey Evan. Hey Evan, what's your best it's not what it looks like moment?
That is... We would have to scrub this entire thing. We've been recording for what, 2 hours now?
2 hours.
I can't tell that story because we'd have to just get rid of the whole episode.
Patreon exclusive?
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Dennis K says, how can you even make a case for not drafting Wallstedt with like that? Wall is in his name. Think about it. Big Mo and the Wall. Dennis, you're not wrong, man. It's really tough. Vax Waxed, and I don't know, man. I'm running out of ideas. Sorry, Joseph. Says, hey, fellas. Now, Brad John. I know that you know that Kent Johnson has a wire-thin frame and couldn't crack a regular spot at center among the U of M forwards. And I know that you know that Mason McTavish was a phenom scoring center in juniors and only played wing in Switzerland because he joined the team at the last minute, and that's where they slotted him. And he drove the offense from the wing on his line and manufactured offenses as a 17-year-old in a men's league. And I know that you know that I know that you know that I know that you know that Aussie for Hall of Fame, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags.
And I know that you know the NCAA is a better and tougher hockey league than any of the ones you mentioned.
Ooh. You view the work in the NCAA as more impactful than the Swiss league he was in.
It's the Tier 2 Swiss league. Yes.
Right, yeah. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
And then also says, also ask for the Rocky Mountain oysters. I don't know if that's referencing something or I just got tricked into saying something on air. Justin and the Angry Mob. Justin, congrats on getting the job, buddy. Says, ciao, fellas. Draft day is just about a week away, and once again, the Red Wings are in a position to draft a quality player at 6th. We've all got our druthers on who we would like to draft. Personally, it's Eklund or McTavish for me, but this podcast is all about the draft. So let me ask you guys this. Do you anticipate any draft day trades that would be more than just a hockey deal? Doesn't have to be Detroit. Yeah, like I referenced earlier, I think there's too many moving parts in the NHL with the expansion draft, the flat cap hurting teams, major names like Eichel and Reinhart, and relevant to Detroit, Bertuzzi. There's too much for something not to happen. So I think, yeah, there's going to be some kind of big trade.
I'm not even ruling out that a couple of these big trades are done. They're stuffed in the back pocket of the GMs and they're not making it now because of expansion protection issues. Because the team doesn't want to take on Eichel now because they have to expose another forward then. So I don't think it's going to be as much as we think. It never is. But I think the Thursday and the Friday of draft week, we're going to see a few come down the pipeline just because obviously if teams are getting picks for this draft, they want them before the draft, but a lot of the expansion protection list issues can't get sorted out till after the expansion draft Wednesday. So I think we're going to get about a 36 to 48 hour window of some serious entertainment there.
All right. And another fun scenario coming our way. You're going to Detroit for the draft party, but want to get something to eat beforehand with all the great places to eat in Detroit, but an inability to replicate ourselves so that we can be in multiple places at once. What restaurant would be your number one overall pick for dinner before the party? I'll hang up and listen. Stay fresh, cheese bags. You're going to make me pick just one, huh? It's been a long time since I've had a Coney Island dog. It's been a really long time. And honestly, I cannot remember the name of the place, but Mexican Town, there's just so much good food there. I don't know, like it's been a really long time since I've been back to Detroit for the food specifically. I'm terrible at remembering the specific names, but yeah, Coney Island dog or something in Mexican Town. Brad eats at the Hard Rock Cafe. I want everyone to know that. And he's dragged Evan and I there multiple times, so he should live that shame on air.
When there was at the Joe, when the Wings still played at the Joe, it was free parking, convenient, and they had a shuttle. I wasn't overthinking this shit.
Brad, 45 places in Detroit validate your parking. It's still not an excuse to eat at the Hard Rock.
It was simple. I didn't overthink it. I was there for the beer and the hockey, not the food. I didn't give a shit about what I was eating.
Evan, do you have any favorite restaurants?
Yeah, I was trying to look it up right now, but I can't remember what the hell the place is called.
Well, we'll come back to it. Jiff says, "G'day, Duds. A lot of heckin' swears in the last episode of the Talkie Show, and even after a supposedly valued member of something you call the Dub family advised you their young children listen to you. For shame." Prospect argument time. All right, Evan, you were evaluating this. BJ, tell the people why Yzerman should YOLO and pick Fedor Svechkov at 6. Cryan, which is me, Ryan, says, argue why he shouldn't, and again, do it good, go at each other, someone throw a punch, we deserve bloodshed. I don't know, Brad, do you want to switch roles here?
No, because I like a challenge, but like, what? I got to take a guy ranked in the mid-teens and pick him at 6. I like 12 players better than the draft. Okay, whatever. 200-foot game center. If his offense is even 20% better than we think it will be, he is a surefire top 6 centerman on a good team. There's the case for it.
If you wanted Fedor Svechkov, I'd be much happier taking the 5-tool player in William Eklund, or the swing for the Stars and Kent Johnson, and then using your assets to trade up from pick 23 for wherever Fedor Svechkov is going to go. That would be too much of a reach for me because he's too much of a safe pick. He'd be a great player to have, and I would love for the Red Wings to end up with him at pick 23, or even if they trade up. But in my mind, there's just too many high risk, high upside players at 6 that I would prefer to take. The fact that you have multiple picks in the first round makes it not unthinkable for me, but it just would not be the best asset management. I'd rather spend those assets on a trade and get, the high ceiling player and the safe centerman in Svechkov.
Well, yeah, but then you lose the opportunity of having Svechkov and Svechnikov on the same line.
Oh, that's actually a fantastic point. Poor Mickey. I don't see them. And also you did make a pretty heavy reach for Seider. Doesn't matter where you ranked him. No one had him where the Red Wings took him. Retroactively, yeah, that seems to have worked out pretty well so far, but I don't know that you can lightning strike twice that way. I wouldn't make that bet.
Svechkov played in Europe, and if the Red Wings pick him at 6 and you argue against it, it means you're arguing against Hakan Andersson, and that's not going to end well for you. Well,
it's not perfect.
That's all I got. Please don't counterpoint. I don't have anything else to follow up with.
Evan, you're judging the winner on that one.
The real winner is the friends we made along the way. I'm choking on a Dorito.
On brand, as always.
The real winner is us for getting to experience Evan's last word. Jesus.
Yeah. BJ
he shoves another handful in.
It's like fighting fire with fire. You eat more Doritos to dislodge the stuck Dorito.
I have a problem.
He's still joking. BJ, what do your beloved Stars need, and who should they be targeting in the first couple of rounds?
Oh, they're one of those teams, they're not really super strong at any one position in their pipeline. I don't know. What's their pick again? 15?
Yeah.
Okay. My 15th ranked prospect is Chibrikov. So him.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, a lot of people have Aturatu being mocked to them, so not terrible. Jersey time, bottom 3 OHL jerseys, keeping it local for you. Stay fresh cheese bags.
Oh my God, Flint and Windsor, the bottom 2 for sure. Those are travesties to the game of hockey. Piping apocalypse never went away.
I know. Windsor pisses me off because the piping that expands at the shoulders murders me, especially because they had the cream / off-white and dark blue W jerseys, or even their old school Spitfires badge. So much better. As a Windsor fan and a Windsor native, that kills me. Peterborough beats for me.
What?
I like the scheme. I like the word mark. I hate the sides. Like, it's almost like piping-esque. I can't stand the beats.
It works when it's only 2 colors. No, for me, it's Erie at number 3. Those new, stupid, ugly, I don't even know what shade of yellow those pieces of garbage are. Those Flint, Erie, and Windsor, and it's not close.
I don't particularly like Ottawa either.
The 67s, really?
Yeah, I think they're kind of ugly.
They're a little wild for sure, but I think they're classic. Like, they might be objectively hard on the eyes, but I think they're just classic as a hockey sweater. Kills me to say, but the London Knights have a super clean uniform on the opposite end of the thing.
London's are top tier. I mean, yeah. Kitchener's are not original, but it's the Rangers jersey. They're iconic. Love them. Yeah. Can't hate. And low key, most people hate on them. I love North Bay. I love the military green. It works.
Oh, the battalion?
Yeah.
I call them Brampton. I still call them Brampton in my head.
Yeah. It's been a while, right?
Yeah, I know. Okay. Tej says, is it bad that I love Jesper but don't want to draft him because certain sections of the Red Wings fan base? Also, Brad, is the only reason you think we should get Eriksson is so you can have matching Stars and Red Wings jersey.
Hell yeah. Let's do it. I'll cut it in half and sew it together.
Eric DRW says, what surprise players from other teams could you expect to see exposed for the expansion draft?
Shea Weber.
Yeah, Shea Weber. Ben Bishop was one that actually came through that I was a little bit surprised to see. Not shocked, but I don't know.
Have Khudobin and Ottinger, even though Ottinger's exempt, but still.
San Jose.
I have not
a tough spot, eh?
No, they're not. If they can shed a contract, they're thrilled. God, I have not looked into the other team's protection list nearly enough to to give an informed opinion here.
Expansion draft coverage coming. We'll have a hit on Monday after the lists are released on Sunday. All right, everyone. That is the 2021 NHL Draft preview episode. It's meaty. It includes Johnson. And it includes a lot of enthusiasm for your host. I'm sorry for making that joke. But no, that is an incredibly... For us, it feels like shallow coverage because there's just so much to know about this draft and it's so difficult, but it's a lot of content being thrown your way. So thank you for sticking with us as we've covered the draft. More draft coverage to come, of course, as we approach the 23rd, the draft stream. So stay tuned for all of that. But that's the preview as it is. Enjoy, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you to all of our listeners, our name level sponsors, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Brett Bailey, King Tone, Terry, driver of Crying Ryan, Hannah Banana Slamma Jamathon, Taylor Tagel, Brendan M, Citizen High Five, Craig Kibble, Greach, Hana Lee, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jacob Turner, Jake Kiefer, Joe Santangelo, Justin and the Angry Mob, Kaylin Wood, Cody Stark, Kyle Hashman, Kyle McClure, Matt McKay, Matthew M. Rice, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Stacy Lynn, Zach Spring, Andrew Bohan, Sam Bankson, Adam I Wish I Could Finish Like Ernie, another former junior goalie turned golfer, Antonio Gracias, Bob Mortimer's Hand Lion, Brad Ferkton Ostrich, allegedly, Colorado 14ers, Connor Leighton, Dave W., Evans Bingo Card, Jeremy Brocker, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Matt Keeler, As Good as It Gets, Trevor Pebabar, Vaxxed Waxed, and I don't know, man, I'm running out of ideas. Thank you all so much. We're almost there.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.